The most wonderful time of the year. Although, let's be honest, around the holidays, things really add up. But here's the good news. Only at Verizon, you can get a single line for $50 per month when you switch and bring your phone. So while ice skating for two is definitely costing more, here at Verizon, you can save. Gifts for your third cousins? Steep. A single line with Verizon? Not so steep. A real tree? Pricey. A single line with Verizon? Less pricey. Flights to see Meemaw and Pops? Those are up. A $50 per month single line? That's down. Even a trip to the Atlanta Holiday Market will cost you more. But with Verizon, you can switch and bring your phone for just $50 per month for a single line on unlimited welcome, with autopay plus taxes and fees. All this to say, during the holiday season, when everything is costing more, you can get more for less right now at a local Verizon store. $15 monthly promo credits applied over 36 months with a new line on unlimited welcome. In times of congestion, unlimited 5G, 4G LTE may be temporarily slower than other traffic. Domestic data roaming at 2G speeds. Additional terms apply.
It's the SNL Hall of Fame podcast with Chief Conversationalist Thomas Senna. Featuring Matt Ardill. And special guest, Kallena Steckle.
And your host, JD. Thanks a lot, Doug the Nats, and me, JD. Hey, it's me, and I'm back in the SNL Hall of Fame. Before I walk inside, though, I, of course, am going to, all together now, wipe those feet. The SNL Hall of Fame podcast is a weekly affair where each episode we take a deep dive into the career of a former cast member, host, musical guest, or writer, and add them to the ballot for your consideration. Once the nominees have been announced, we turn to you, the listener, to vote for the most deserving and help determine who will be enshrined for perpetuity in the hall. And that's how we play the game. It's just that simple. Yeah. I'm glad you're here today. It's going to be a lot of fun. We've got Kallena Steckle joining us for another visit to the SNL Hall of Fame. She'll be in conversation with Thomas. But now let's go and do what we do at this point in the episode. And I'm walking down the hall right now. My keys are jingling because Matt isn't standing in his usual corner. He's actually locked in the janitor's closet. So let me just open that up. Matt, how you doing in there?
I'm good now that you let me out. I this is what happens when you go looking for gas leaks. You get locked in closets. So,
That's right.
Yeah. So thanks for
what do you got
having
for us
me
today.
Oh, well, I have got SNL and Seinfeld alum, Julia Scarlett Elizabeth Louis-Dreyfus.
Oh,
ready to roll?
Let's do it.
All right. 5'3", born January 13th, 1961. She has 55 acting credits, 8 producer credits, and 1 writing credit. She was born in New York to French billionaire Gerard Louis-Dreyfus and writer and educator Judith Bowles. So she comes from money. So she's doing this out of love, not necessity.
A billionaire in 1961. Like, my goodness.
Yeah. So very well to do, especially at the time. Now, she has a storied family. Her great-grandfather, founded the Louis-Dreyfus Group, and her uncle was the CEO of Adidas from 1993 to 2001. And while that's her father's side, on her mother's side, her great-grandfather was a member of the Republican House of Representatives. So politics and business comes from a very different path than she decided to choose. She actually first discovered she loved making people laugh when she stuck raisins up her nose at the age of 3 and got a laugh out of her mom.
That'll fit.
Yeah, and it led to an emergency room visit, unfortunately. But, if you don't suffer for the laugh, it's not really worth it.
That's right.
Now, she has a half-sister, Lauren Bowles, who is also an actress. And she has a good relationship with all of her parents and step parents. She feels they've all been very important in her path on the way to where she is today. She graduated from the Holton Arms School in Bethesda before attending Northwestern, studying theater and performing in the Meow Show, a student improv and sketch event. And then she dropped out as a junior to join SNL. She met her husband, Brad Hall, on the set of the fantasy horror movie Troll in 1986. And she's performed as a member of Second City and in the Practical Theater Company, a company started by her husband. She is nominated for 26 Emmys, 9 Golden Globes, 21 SAG Awards, 10 American Comedy Awards, 6 Critics' Choice Awards, 6 People's Choice Awards, 4 Producer Guild of America Awards, 10 Satellite Awards, and 7 Television Association Awards. Plus, she's also won the Mark Twain Prize for American Humor in 2018. So
she must have the biggest trophy case.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely a lot of accolades. But you know, she's also I'll wrap up with this. She's also very humble. She won an Emmy for The New Adventures of Old Christine over Jane Kaczmarek. But the next day, she sent Jane a bouquet with a card saying that you got screwed. So she's gracious and humble, not to mention a billionaire. So just shows not all billionaires are Elon Musk.
Right. That's good to know.
Yeah.
So I'm going to put you back in the closet now, and then we'll head downstairs to Thomas and Kallena Steckle.
All right. Just remember to let me out when you go.
I will.
All right, Matt and JD, thank you so much. Yes, welcome to another edition of the conversation portion of the SNL Hall of Fame. Today we are talking about a former cast member, but also probably more, I think, well-known, and certainly in SNL circles, is a host. So we're going to be talking about today Julia Louis-Dreyfus as a host in the host category. So joining me to talk about Julia Louis-Dreyfus, she joined me for Anne Hathaway last season. It was so much fun. I had to bring her back. Kallena Steckle, how are you today?
I am great, Thomas. I'm so excited to be here with you today. I'm so happy to be back on the show, and what a great guest that we have to talk about.
Yeah, she's the best. Like one of the more likable people out there, in my opinion.
Agreed. and I think has been her entire career.
Yeah, absolutely. It's incredible. A long career spanning since she started SNL, spanning over 40 years now.
Just unreal.
Just incredible. So I'm so excited when we drafted Julia Louis-Dreyfus. I was so pumped to be able to talk about her. So I know, Kallena, you're famously not online very much.
Yes.
So I don't think people can necessarily find you in there. But you do have stuff going on. I recently heard you on the Hot Take show after the was it the Ariana Grande?
It was
episode, on the Saturday Night Network. So, are we gonna be hopefully seeing you on the SNN?
I would love to be. I was really busy like last season, so I feel like I was barely on the show last season. And I was able to squeeze in, of course, our Anne Hathaway episode with you, which was great. I am famously offline for a little over a year now. I have no regrets about my decision other than I am so out of the loop on pop culture stuff. Luckily, I have about a handful of friends who know this and have assigned it as like their personal duty to kind of keep me in the loop. But man, like celebrity deaths or like big movie news, I will be like a week late and I'll be like, did you hear this person died? And they're like, yeah, everyone did a week ago. So that's maybe the only downside. to being offline. So in theory, all my accounts exist still under at Shut Up Kallena. You just will not find me active on them unless it's something really I think the last time I logged onto Instagram was when Jonathan Groff won a Tony Award, and that's because that was really important to me, and I wanted an excuse to post my picture with him. So yeah, hopefully I'll be on the SNN a little bit more. I'm now on a coast with a timeline that is more in line with the kind of things I'm interested in anyway, and so that will allow a bit more scheduling availability for me. So hopefully I'll be in the circle a bit more than this past year.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. A lot of exciting things, it sounds like, happening with you and your life. And hopefully we'll see you a ton on the SNN. You did the smart thing that I admire, just being offline. And I mean, I'm out of the loop. Yeah, I do Instagram and Twitter, but I'm out of the loop as far as pop culture. So I have no excuse.
I think I used to be so heavily involved. Like, I was someone who was just constantly scrolling on Twitter or always on Instagram. And I was maybe like the top informed friend in my group at any given time. But it became exhaustive. And I would be like at a doctor's appointment and I would step off to go use the restroom. And I'm like checking Twitter like with one hand while I'm washing the other. And it's like, this is obscene, and I feel like I'm burning my brain cells at a faster rate than the universe is already doing on its own. And so it's like the one little grip of control I can have on my environment and my surroundings. And when I really feel like being indulged in pop culture, the internet's still there. I just don't have to have it be my complete center of orbit.
Well, maybe you could be a model for me someday. So I'll keep you in mind.
Slowly but surely.
To set the table today for our nominee, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, this is the second time actually on the SNL Hall of Fame that we've discussed a host who used to be a cast member. Actually, the first was Martin Short, who we discussed. So Julia joined the cast in 1982, and she was seasons 8 through 10. So she was on the cast with Eddie Murphy, and then she was actually on with Martin Short and Billy Crystal and them. She was only 21 years old when she joined the cast. Imagine being 21, Kallena, and being in that environment.
I can't fathom. I read that at the time she was the youngest female cast member that had ever been on the show. I feel like, I mean, listen, I'm 28, so I'm not necessarily that far removed from 21, but certainly in my mind, I'm closer to 30 than I am to 20. And it's not like 21 was some big dramatic year for me or anything like that. I had also been homeschooled for a majority of my life, so I think my version of 21 was probably a lot different than other people's 21. But I know certainly where I was mentally at 21. I also know where I thought I was mentally at 21, especially as someone who was working in the arts at that time and was, had been in theater and was now working on movie and television sets. That's what I was doing at that time. So I have a small idea of kind of what it's like to be involved in that world, but trying to fathom being on that scale. And in my opinion, there's really no other show like Saturday Night Live. Obviously, there's things like Mad TV and In Living Color, and there's comparable formats. But to me, SNL will always be its own thing. And at the end of the day, it's one of the only shows that is still on where people are having to create fresh every week. And listen, it's the top tier. It's the thing that you strive for if you're working in comedy, or often if you're just working in the arts in general. Like I feel like it's on every artist's bucket list to host the show or be on the show. So to have that be presented to you, from my understanding, while she was working at Second City on a troupe there, I cannot even begin to imagine what that feeling was, how overwhelming that might have been. And then when you look at the roster of who she's on the show with, the Billy Crystals and the Eddie Murphys and the Martin Shorts of the world, who people, of course, recognize their level of talent at the time, but would also then kind of go on to skyrocket after that. It just feels like such a moment in the zeitgeist that I can't imagine any of them were able to be fully aware of it until maybe a little bit after the fact.
Yeah, that's such a great point that you bring up. It's not just any show that she joined as a 21-year-old. It's a live, pressure-packed show. I was fortunate enough to be able to talk to Robin Duke recently here on the SNL Hall of Fame. She was a cast member with Julia on SNL in the early 80s. Robin Duke was on SCTV, which is it was a pre-taped sketch show.
Right.
So I was able to ask her, the differences and stuff. And she was like, massive difference. She's like, SCTV, we could do different takes. We could get it right. Like, I described it to her as a high wire act doing SNL, and she agreed. She's like, it did feel like a high wire act doing that. And I'm with you. When I was 21, I was working in media. I was working in radio. I was doing a little bit of on-air stuff behind the scenes. But I couldn't even imagine somebody thrusting me into doing something like SNL at 21. She even said that maybe she wasn't probably quite prepared for that experience.
How can you be? How can anyone ever be prepared for that experience? And I feel like too, because I think about, like, in film, Spielberg is one of, like, the heavy hitters, right? And how everyone dreams of working with them. And so I think of something like E.T. and Drew Barrymore, I think, was only like 6 years old. And granted, she has a very, like, complex life and had been acting from such a young age. But I feel like when you land something really big, you either have to be young enough that it's kind of like over your head, like you can't really process the scope of it, or you have to be old enough that you do understand it, and your shoes are a little bit more lived in, and the weight of it lands with you a little bit more. And 21, I think, is just that sweet spot where it's like, how could you? You have barely existed long enough in the world. You're definitely an adult. You definitely have responsibilities. You certainly have bills to pay. But you're not necessarily young enough that you can just get away and be like, well, I didn't know. So I mean, gosh, that really just rattles my mind, because you have to be, I think, a very strong and determined person. And I think you have to know yourself pretty well to take that on. And I don't know a lot of 21-year-olds who are very certain of themselves.
I certainly don't. I didn't when I was 21.
Right.
That was 21 years ago when I was 21. I'm dating myself, but like, I'm completely with you. Have you seen much or any of Julia's work as a cast member?
No, and we were discussing before the show that it's difficult to find episodes. It's difficult to find clips. I've seen some clips when she was a cast member on the show, and she seemed to be a bit more like supporting than lead in the clips that I found. So unfortunately, I'm not as familiar as I wish I was.
Yeah, she even made fun of that in one of her monologues. Yeah, she's like, "There's me in the Ed Grimley sketch," and it's just her. She plays a secretary that's like ushering Ed Grimley into the room, and then so she was self-aware. I do remember she played like Marie Osmond one time. I remember her. Okay. She had like her other famous characters were Patty Lynn Hunsaker, which was a Weekend Update correspondent in April, May, June, a televangelist, but didn't really make as much of a mark on the show as people might think. They think, oh, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, oh, she was on SNL, she must have been the star, but not.
But she made it for 3 seasons, which
3 seasons.
And I feel like too, especially for like new cast members as audience members, that's kind of where we're critical, right? Whether we know the inside baseball or not, we're like, well, if they make it past the first season, or if they establish a character, or if they get a bit on Update, like I feel like we have these certain markers as fans and audience members. And hitting 3 seasons is huge. And it's one of my favorite trivia pieces. I did like, I don't know, at the end of August, I was at some like bar trivia night, and randomly they had a bonus round, and it was like a SNL. They had to bring up someone from every team. And so obviously I ran to the front. And all it was you went in a continuous circle and you had to just name SNL cast members. And I was like, I can be here for 4 hours. Let's go. Many people got eliminated very quickly, but one of the ones I threw in was Julia Louis-Dreyfus. And they were like, are you sure she was a cast member? I was like, I dare you to fact check me. Please.
Yeah,
it was, granted, there was a part of me that was like a little, chest puffy about it, but also because you know her in comedy and you know her name. And to me, she's one of the greats, up there with the likes of Mary Tyler Moore and Carol Burnett and these legendary, amazing women. But you don't realize that she also started on the show that you just kind of assume that anyone that is in comedy must have started on, or, must have aspired to. So it's a little bit under the radar, I think, in a lot of like general ways that we think. But, there's a reason she was on there for 3 years. And I think her career proves it.
100%. She might have been on for longer than that if the show didn't retool. That was she was on Dick Eberstall's last year, and then Lorne came back, and then he just completely cleaned house. So she might have lasted longer if it weren't the case. But she did have a couple of important relationships when she was on the show. So one was a carryover. She came to the cast with Brad Hall, who was still her husband. They were both on the cast
40-something years
together.
later.
That's awesome. Like a really neat sketch comedy love story. Between Julia and Brad Hall. That was awesome. And that's also where she met Larry David. So that proved to be a crucial one.
Her last and his only year on SNL. So if that's not a crossing of the fates, right? I mean, that they had one opportunity to meet each other professionally, and it happened.
it happened, and of course that led to her being on Seinfeld. You told me, right? You just finished watching Seinfeld.
I did,
all the way
yeah.
through.
My maybe like one of my number one obsessions in life is NBC in the 90s, like the must-watch TV on Thursdays. I
Yep.
have so many books on it. I very much was participating in it, despite the fact that I was only like 5 years old while some of it was going on, not even 5 years old. And so I vaguely remember having like watched Seinfeld as part of the lineup because my thing was ER. I was obsessed with ER. It remains my favorite show of all time. I have the 331 episode box set. And part of my bargain with my parents was that I could stay up to watch ER, which did not even come on until 10 p.m. when I was living in Chicago. And I was allowed to stay in the basement and watch it by myself as long as I went to bed afterwards. And Seinfeld was obviously part of that lead up. But it wasn't until maybe earlier this year that I was like, why haven't I just watched it all the way through as an adult? And it's on Netflix, I believe. And so I binged all 9 seasons. And my goodness, if that show does not hold up just as well as I think when it aired.
Isn't it great? What did you think of Julia specifically in it?
I could easily choose to not remember anyone else on the show and just focus on her. And that's saying something because obviously every person on that show is amazing and every person on that show has continued to have long, successful careers. She is so fearless. She is so funny. She is not afraid to make herself look foolish, which I think is so important in comedy. It's one thing to have timing. It's one thing to be quick on your feet. It's one thing to be witty or smart. But to just be uninhibited and be able to remove your identity from yourself and just openly be the person or the thing that you're trying to be, I think is a really special talent to possess. And she has it. And she went full force on that show. And to me is the MVP and has won a ridiculous amount of awards. I was doing so much research ahead of our show here. And if the information I read is not wrong, she is either the or like one of the most nominated women of all time.
Yeah.
It's insane. And as she should be, rightfully so.
As she should be. That's interesting that you brought up exactly what's always stood out to me with her work on SNL. She's not afraid to be the butt of the joke.
Yep.
And I think about right away, so I'm first of all, I'm a Seinfeld geek. You're talking to somebody who I remember, like with the whole NBC lineup, I remember watching in real time promos for a new show called Friends that hadn't aired yet. So I remember watching a promo going like, that looks like an interesting. I was like 12 or something. That looks cool. I'll maybe check that out. But Seinfeld is like a big touchstone in my whole family as far as like we reference it constantly.
Yeah.
So one of the episodes that we all love, that I love, is when George starts to be successful because he's going against his instincts, and then it coincides with Elaine's kind of downfall, and that's Jerry points out that he's even Steven in the situation. But just all like Julia not being afraid just to be portrayed as down in the dumps, and Elaine's nothing going right for her, and this so but she has spunk too, and attitude.
She does. Well, and Seinfeld, I think, is partly famous because notoriously all of the characters are pretty bad people. Like, they don't really have redeeming qualities. I think that's part of why the ending was controversial to some. And so, especially as a woman in comedy or just a woman in the arts, I feel like there's so much pressure and scrutiny around us to be beautiful and be youthful and be classy and be smart. And, people who maybe have issues with, I don't want to say issues with feminism, but like maybe have critiques on the conversation around feminism. They want you to both be able to hold your own and not say that you're better than any one person or any one gender, but also then be willing to be gross and be weird and be ugly. And so it's such like a catch-22, and it's hard to kind of perfectly find that middle ground where you do that honestly and you do that earnestly, but you also do that on a commercially successful level. And I feel like that's exactly what she did and has continued to do.
Yeah, it's for all those reasons, her success on Seinfeld, the fact that she was a former cast member, the build up to her first hosting stint was pretty huge. I mean, by 2006 was her first hosting gig. So she was
so long.
Yeah, maybe on the most successful sitcom of all time. it was one of those things where it like made very little sense to anyone why Julia hadn't hosted
Right.
at least sometime in the 90s. Like Jerry
Right.
Seinfeld, I think he's the only one from there actually. Michael Richards and Jason Alexander. Well, maybe Jason Alexander did. Digress, but like Julia never hosted in the 90s. People
Right.
probably were always wondering. So basically, this was a long time coming
Yeah.
for people.
Yeah. And wasn't she the first female former cast member to host, if I'm not mistaken?
I think so, because then we started seeing later on, like, of course, Kristen came
Right.
back.
Right.
Jan Hooks had never hosted. She would have been one. Gilda Radner was supposed to host.
Oh, wow.
And then the writer's strike happened, and then she unfortunately passed.
Yeah.
And so she never got a chance to.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, I think Julia actually, might have been. That's a fun piece of SNL
Yeah.
trivia right there. For sure. I look at it kind of like it would almost be like if Melissa Villaseñor became really famous
Right.
after she left the show.
Right.
And her return would be so anticipated because Melissa was good on the show,
Yeah.
but she wasn't like a superstar.
Right.
So I think like the analogy, that's like maybe the closest analog
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
I can think of.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
she's amazing. And Melissa, it's such an interesting thing. I saw she just did an interview recently where she said that kind of like just her heart wasn't in it. Like she loved it and she
Yeah.
loved comedy, but the scene was overwhelming to her. And unfortunately, I don't know Melissa's age off the top of my head, but that's kind of a great foil to what we're talking about here, where like Melissa landed the dream gig. She was, I think really well liked, really funny. I've seen her go do stand-up several times. I'm a big fan of hers personally. But she just didn't really fit in like, the cog of the machine. And then you have Julia who got that at 21. And I don't know, I obviously can't speak for either of them for certain, whether they had similar or different experiences. But I think when you get the gig, you either know that it works for you or you don't. And then what your career becomes after that is kind of directly related. And so when you kind of compare Melissa or Julia, it's an interesting foil there.
Exactly. Not 100% hitting on SNL doesn't mean like it's a bad thing for the rest of your career. We're seeing Tim
Right.
Robinson right now.
Right. He's killing
super
it.
successful.
Killing it.
And
Yeah.
he was on one season and he got some stuff on, but
Not much.
yeah. So May 13th, 2006, finally the time, Julia Louis-Dreyfus hosting SNL. That's in season 31. We're going to say up front, this episode's really hard to find.
Really hard
Peacock,
to find.
there's like 18 minutes of this episode
Yeah.
on Peacock. The other channels, if you know, that some of us used to watch episodes through, we've been thwarted for the time being. We've been blocked for the time being. So 18 minutes is all we could find on her
whole
first
sketches.
episode. Yeah, 2 whole sketches. One of them a lot of people really liked actually
Yeah.
from this. So you want to? We just probably talk about both of them. So MySpace Seminar was the first one.
So listen, my quote unquote generation of SNL, because I started watching like religiously around 2009. So I got that amazing like 2010, through like 2014 cast, which I will always, whether biased or not, think is one of the greatest ensembles that show has ever seen. I did not realize until I was watching this episode how early so many of them started. So when this MySpace sketch starts and it's Samberg and it's Parnell and it's Horatio Sands and it's Seth Meyers and
I forgot Horatio was still on the cast by then.
I was shocked
So
that he
was a
was still on the
surprise.
cast. Yeah, and it's Will Forte and it's Jason Sudeikis and you're like, oh man, all these guys, like it's all of them and then Julia and it's like, wait, it's 2006 and Andy's hair still looks crazy. And wait, like what's going on? That kind of shook me for a minute. I barely remember, and in fairness, I think so does he sometimes, that Seth Meyers was an actor on the show for a while before he was just writing and doing update. And so that was like a little bit jarring. But after I got over my initial shock of seeing who the lineup was in that sketch, it was also very impressive to be like, man, they may not have even really realized it at the time, but she is like the outsider in this sketch, right? Like she's kind of the sore thumb, and she's totally holding her own against who would all either were or would go on to become these heavy hitters. An interesting premise that takes a bit of a turn that they kind of hint at, but at one point then becomes just very clear what's going on. And I don't know that necessarily her character has like a whole lot to do. I think she is kind of meant to be the straight man or like the foil in the sketch amongst the guys there. But really fun. And surprisingly, it was kind of like a longer sketch than I was expecting. And she had quite a bit of lines and got to be forefront in this sketch about people learning what MySpace is, basically taking a MySpace 101 and how to develop profiles. And they kind of learn that as the only woman in the class, that maybe some of the guys in there are not setting up MySpace profiles for the most noble of reasons.
Yeah, she plays a good, like, somewhat clueless mom because her
Yes.
daughter's on MySpace, so she wants to, like, find out what her daughter's doing and maybe connect with her a little bit. So I think, like, Julia, in a lot of these sketches, these episodes that we'll talk about, she's like a chameleon. She kind of does a lot of different types of roles. So right now it's like the clueless mom.
Okay, let's get started. This is a slightly older group than I was expecting.
Well, I admit I'm not here to start my own MySpace page. My daughter is spending all of her time on it, so I thought I should see what all this hullabaloo was about.
Okay.
Were you on MySpace? Were you too young for MySpace?
Oh, no, I was on MySpace.
Oh, were you?
Yeah, I barely understood what it was for. I think I just liked that I got to decorate my profile and that I got to pick a song. And I'll date myself. I was like, my songs were like High School Musical or Hannah Montana because that's how old I was at the time I had a MySpace profile.
Yeah.
And I did not ever quite make it to like the pop punk side of life. And so I was not into like Fall Out Boy or things like that my friends were. I hope that profile does not exist on the internet somewhere still because I couldn't even imagine its current status.
You're good.
But no, I did not use it for any interesting reasons. I just thought I needed to have one because all of my friends did.
Yeah, none of us did. And then you had your top. They expanded. It was like a top 4, and then they expanded to the top 8, and then you had to. So that was like we literally like can rank your friends on there.
Yep.
It created a whole thing.
It was always Tom, right? That was everyone's first
Tom,
friend.
and then yeah, exactly.
And then whoever else.
Thumbs up or whatever. Yeah. So a lot of people love MySpace Seminar. I think it's a good sketch. Like you said, Julia, not a ton to do. Like the guys were more of the star,
right?
But she holds her own as far as like a straight person in the sketch. And and then the other one was Charades, set in the 70s game show Charades. Julia plays a contestant on the show. Another kind of like interesting, slight, kind of dirty innuendo premise here.
Yep. Which was a great vehicle for Amy in the sketch, which I think was more so the purpose. So again, we're seeing a sketch where Julia's kind of the straight man and she's the foil and she's the one who doesn't quite get the game or feel like she's a little bit left out. It was also, I think, a vehicle for the other cast members to do celebrity impressions, not all of which were fully fleshed out. Will Forte's impression of a certain Olympic contestant and winner was kind of weird, and I think was more so just for Will to kind of be silly and repeat lines. It was fun for Maya to kind of be a little bit over the top and kind of fun, but overall, I don't know, kind of another one that I felt was like, this is kind of going on for a long time, but that's okay. Yeah. And again, Julia was fun, and she was like, not to imply that the host is never not the outsider, because obviously that's the point. They're surrounded by the cast. But in these 2 sketches that we have available to watch in this first episode, it seemed maybe more obvious to me that it was like these great cast members really doing their thing and really being able to shine. And Julia's purpose was kind of to allow that to happen. Like, I don't necessarily feel like they were sketches that were written to showcase Julia's talents.
No, I think that was a product of the time of SNL.
Sure.
I think that seemed to be the case with a lot of hosts that would come in. Like they're going and the host is going to play in their playground.
Right.
And not necessarily the other way around.
Right.
Julia had some good physical. I thought there was good physical acting here because they had to do charades. And so it's both Amy Poehler and Julia doing physical acting. So I thought that was pretty fun. Julia got to showcase that. Yeah.
Yeah. I wish her and Amy had gotten to interact a little bit more. I think that would have been fun kind of to see them go a bit head to head, or but I mean, I wish the stakes had been higher because each correctly guessed clue was only worth $5, but that's also kind of the joke itself.
Yeah.
So it made me laugh, but I don't know. I was a little bit bummed that those were the only 2 sketches that were available. And again, you and I were discussing before the show, is it music rights or what's the reason that we can't find these even on YouTube or why they're not on Peacock? But I don't know. Hard to rate her first episode because we have so little to go from.
Yeah.
But luckily,
NBC,
they invited her back the very next season.
they did. NBC Universal needs to give the people what they want.
Yes,
and put these full
NBC.
episodes on.
If you're
Find a way.
listening, which we know you are,
Yes.
just give us the episodes, NBC.
Give
Come
us the
on.
goods.
You got
Give
them in
it
the
to us.
vault.
Yeah. And you're right. She did come back less than a calendar year later, actually, March 17th, 2007. We get the full shebang here. So we get to see, and then the next one too, full on Julia hosting SNL.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you enjoyed from this viewing?
I was happy that there was just a full episode for sure. It certainly made me wonder because it's not completely uncommon, but I think it's notable when hosts get invited back so quickly afterwards. And granted, she was at this point pretty in the midst of the new adventures of Old Christine, which again, she was winning a lot of awards for. And so obviously it makes sense from a promotional standpoint, but it's not like there's ever a lack of people to invite to host the show. So I think it was meaningful that they brought her back so quickly. I do always like to kind of observe with returning hosts, especially hosts that were former cast members, if I feel like I watch them progressively getting more comfortable or finding their groove a little bit more. And you would kind of just automatically assume, well, if they were on the show, especially someone who's on the show for 3 years, that it wouldn't even be something that she thinks of. But I think being a host and being a cast member are such drastically different roles. And I think maybe your experience during those 7 days or kind of like what your job is at any given moment is so different that I think they're not the same thing. And I did certainly feel like I saw her, kind of coming into her own a little bit more in the second and later her third episode. What about you? Anything like that stick out for you?
Yeah, definitely. What I saw was like her being able to, like you said, come in her own, play different archetypes.
Yeah.
Too, which was like she kind of took, especially one swing in Deep House Dish.
Yeah.
I've never seen Julia do anything like that. She was a guest on Deep House Dish, who was a pop star named Dee Dee Wells.
Yep.
And she put on like a bratty, wild accent, had this weird song.
Yeah.
I've never really seen Julia. Usually she'll play like the mom or play something like that. But this was like, I've never seen Julia this way in anything. So that was almost like jarring, but like in an interesting way.
Shorties at this party should be carded. All the shorties at this party should be carded. Don't bring your bowl of chili into this hot tub, 'cause if that bowl of chili ends up in this hot tub, I put my top back on. That's right. I put my top back on. Pull up, yeah! Attention, all you shorties should be carded.
Jarring is a perfect word. It's how I felt about that entire sketch. I was maybe just a little bit past MTV's heyday, so I've only seen like certain clips, and to me it felt kind of like something I would see on MTV. But the, like sideways camera angles and the weird push-ins and push-outs, really interesting. I think she looked and sounded great. I thought it was like a great excuse to just remind everyone how awesome she is. And yeah, I don't quite know what her put on accent was necessarily emulating or what it was, but it was just kind of like zany and fun. And yeah, you're absolutely right. Like we're almost expecting her to be a mom or something. Because if I'm not mistaken, she was already in her 40s at the time, or like maybe nearing her 40s at the time that she hosted.
I think like mid 40s.
Okay, yeah. So
honestly, yeah.
So I think when that happens, we're kind of assuming that she's going to play a certain type of character. So I totally agree. I think it was really fun to see her doing something different. This was the episode. Oh no, I was thinking of the next one. The next one had a few of the pre-tapes, which we'll get to later, because that was kind of chock full. Sure. The CBS Cares really had me cracking up. I will say, out of all 3 episodes that were available, that was probably the sketch that had me laughing the hardest. I really love when they kind of minimize certain sketches, and so when it's just a small amount of players that are in the sketch, or when it's a really basic premise, or there's like a really limited set. I always love that because it kind of forces whoever's playing in it to have it be about them, and it really allows them to shine and kind of literally puts the spotlight on them. And so the premise for this one, anyone who may not have seen it, is that Julia is playing herself doing a promo for CBS for breast cancer awareness, which I believe, had she already been diagnosed and publicly announced that she had breast cancer, or
I feel like this was maybe a little before.
A little before? Okay, so Julia Louis-Dreyfus famously got and successfully beat breast cancer, and so in the public eye, she's a famous advocate for it. And then in this sketch, she's just kind of saying, like, go get your mammogram and just make sure you get checked out. And Bill Hader is the director, and Jason Sudeikis is the boom operator. And Sudeikis' arms are tired, and he's having trouble keeping the boom out of the shot. And Bill is, just trying to get through it. It's a quick little 30-second promo that shouldn't take them that long. And so it's a sketch where they just have to keep redoing takes.
If you're a woman over the age of 40, do the responsible thing and make sure you have a yearly mammogram because, hey, a little prevention just might save your life.
Cut. Great.
No one can see this, right?
Nope.
Okay.
Look great.
Yeah. You know what? Just get that away. Get it away from me.
That's a wrap, folks. We got it.
I want you stay back from me.
And it's great because the stakes keep getting higher. Like, they keep upping the ante. All three players are progressively getting more irritated with each other as the sketch goes on. And so then Julia, trying to just be a professional, is letting it slide at first. And then Jason gets a little bit more adolescent in his behavior and starts, poking her at the microphone or purposely getting it in the shot. And then that just has Bill yelling, "Jeff!" in funny voices. And I don't know, maybe it's just because I was watching this at like 11:30 at night after a long day of work. But I was laughing so hard at this sketch. And I thought it was fun to get to see her play herself, but then play a side that, I don't know, you would assume in the public eye, like, if you're a celebrity or you're any kind of public figure, you don't want people to see you lose your temper or be impolite. Like, that's part of maintaining the image. And so I thought it was kind of like a cool meta moment. And again, an example of her not being afraid to be the butt of the joke, because she is herself playing herself and is playing maybe not the friendliest version of herself at a certain point of the sketch. So I thought it was great.
Yeah. Like, politely annoyed.
Yes,
I think she did that really well.
She did.
Like, she was annoyed with Jason, who in these CBS Cares, it's a recurring sketch, and he's a bully.
Yes.
As a boom mic operator. Another one I remember is when LeBron James hosted, and they did another one like this.
Wow. Yeah.
And Jason was the same way. So Julia was playing that, like, politely annoyed really well, but you're right, it was ramping up. You could see her patience getting tested. More and more, and it was kind of a precursor to what we would see, like, maybe later in her career.
Right.
But she's good. And I mean, I guess in Seinfeld, like, she showed a lot of attitude as well. So
not so much politeness from Elaine, though. And this reminded me as well. This is the second sketch in this episode where she was playing herself, because also in the Vinny Vedecci sketch, which was, gosh, I forgot that was even a thing that existed, and that also had me laughing so hard. Yeah, it's again, for anyone who may not have seen it, she goes on this talk show playing herself, promoting the new adventures of old Christine, and she does not know until they are right in the middle of their taping that the show is exclusively in Italian, a language that she does not speak. And so it's Bill Hader is the host. I don't know if he's speaking real Italian or if he's speaking comedy made up version of Italian, and he's fighting with Fred Armisen, his producer, who's sitting beneath the camera drinking wine and eating spaghetti. And it's an opportunity for Hader to kind of pull out some Seinfeld impressions, which I was not expecting. His Kramer was really, really great. And it's, again, a fun moment for Julia where, she's kind of playing the straight man and she's kind of playing the foil and she's playing herself, which, as we've been talking, this seems to be kind of a reoccurring theme for her.
Comparo con piso de pandos, pontaros viandandos, comparos diandos, American televisione corabandos, pisi rabandes.
Oh, I am so sorry. I didn't know that this would be in Italian. I don't really speak.
¿Qué?
I don't speak Italian.
But the craziness that Bill and Fred are doing, again, does not work if she's not there to do the other half of it, right? So her kind of being confused and trying to keep an even temper, and again, that kind of like polite annoyedness of like, sorry, I don't speak Italian, like, I don't know what's going on. she allows the sketch to keep progressing and to keep building up. So just an interesting thing that just occurred to me, that she played herself a couple times in this episode.
Yeah, right. She played herself, having to contain her I guess, being annoyed, essentially. So Vinny asked Julia about, like, during Seinfeld being in the New Adventures of Old Christine. She's like, he's not in that one.
Right.
And then he just decides to do his Kramer impression, his Jerry Seinfeld impression. And she has to even tell him, like, that
Kramer was
Seinfeld
better.
one, yeah, the Kramer one was better. On about the Jerry one. That was the recent Sábado Gigante sketch in the Bargatze episode when I first saw it, I was like, oh, this is like a Sábado Gigante is a real show, but just the tone of it, the nature of it, remind me of like a Vinny Vedecci
absolutely
kind of thing. You're just in this show that's happening, and the person's just so confused. I don't know what's going on.
You're just along for the ride.
I'm just along for the ride. I'm just gonna, and I kind of have a decent sense of humor about it, but maybe I'm a little uncomfortable. So no, I really loved her in this one too, and she got to play also like a good weird loser kind of character in this Oprah sketch.
Yeah.
So Julia plays a woman, Pamela, who was helped by the book that Oprah's guest wrote, The Secret. So, which was a big thing at the time. Huge. A lot of people. So you got to read The Secret. You got to read The Secret. So they did a sketch on it, and really the book didn't help the character. As she was describing crazy things she did after her husband left her and all of that stuff. So just a very like weird. She had braces. Just it's like a
bizarre wig that she had on.
Yeah.
And great point, because it's so opposite of what she had been playing. You know, she had been the straight man, and this time she wasn't. And even against Maya doing a really fun and maybe slightly exaggerated impersonation of Oprah, yeah, you're right. Julia was just playing someone who, again, was not really a good person and was on television admitting to all the crazy things that she had done that got progressively worse the more that she revealed the details of what she was doing.
I'm also currently awaiting trial for some things I did to his girlfriend. And, you know, it's funny because every time I see my lawyer, I tell him, don't worry, I'm going to win, okay? And he says, no, you're going to have to, like, take a plea bargain or plead insanity. And I tell him that it's his negative energy, you know, that's a problem. And then he says that me being caught on tape is the problem, but he doesn't have the secret.
She had kind of a lisp because of the braces that she had, and she really got to do, I think, like fun character work in this sketch, which was really fun to see.
Yeah, that let off the night. That was a really great lead off sketch. Yeah. Is there anything else from this episode that kind of you want to talk about?
I'm slightly compelled to talk about homebots, but also I don't know if we need to.
Because I mean, that's a weird Will Forte, Fred Armisen thing, and Julia's just kind of like
there.
Straight person for it. It's madness. Go look up Homebots.
Yeah, I don't think we need to spoil it for you. I think just go watch it for yourself and then, you know, let us know what you think about it.
Yeah, it takes a turn.
It does. And it's really just a setup for one other cast member to show up at the end and deliver one line. That's what it felt like the whole sketch was.
Exactly. So that's just a little like Julia isn't the star of that one,
right?
But yeah, it's kind of significant if you're into weird Will Forte, and I'm talking weird Will Forte,
which I am. Don't get me wrong; it's my favorite version of Will Forte, but that's pretty out there.
Yeah, it was pretty out there. So I think solid episode.
Yeah,
Julia. Excellent, comfortable host. She doesn't come back, though, for another 9 years.
A long time.
So, 2016, spring, April of 2016.
And, with very good reason why she comes back at the time they did. I mean, listen, if there's anything we could say for sure, I don't think SNL ever does anything on accident. Certainly with their hosts. And obviously part of what makes SNL so great is that it's always been a topical show. It's always a mirror to pop culture and to the world, and it's, I think, a lighthearted way to consume things that are happening in the world. Obviously, there was, a lot going on politically at the time, but she was also, I believe, currently in the middle of her very successful run on Veep, which admittedly I've only seen episodes and clips of, but what I've seen has looked amazing. I'm debating maybe starting it now just because of the current political climate that we're in once again. It kind of feels like...
I just finished a rewatch a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, because during the last election, I decided to do a rewatch of West Wing to kind of maintain my sanity a little bit. So it feels like maybe for this one, maybe Veep is maybe perfectly the time to start watching it. So I expect that I'll be watching it very soon. But I think it was really perfectly timed to have her on the show, and we get her in the cold open. So it's, again, I think set up very intentionally.
The cold open is a Democratic presidential debate. So at the time, in April, they were still doing the primaries. So it was Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton. So we have Larry David as Bernie Sanders and Kate McKinnon as Hillary Clinton. And then they take questions from people, from average New Yorkers. They take questions from. Julia comes on as Elaine Bennis. She's reprising her Seinfeld character. They take a question from Elaine.
So listen, you've been pretty vague in the past, but how exactly are you going to break up the big banks?
You mean a big bank breakup?
Yeah, a big bank breakup.
Yeah, break them up!
How?
Once I'm elected president, I'll have a nice schwitz in the White House gym. Then I'll go to the big banks. I'll sit them down. And yada, 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 they'll be broken up.
What? No. You can't yada, yada at a debate. Also, you yada, yada'd over the best part.
No, I mentioned the schwitz.
Looks exactly the same, by the way. It almost made me so mad how identical she. It's the hair, yeah. And the outfit was great. And she's not just like a pop-up in the cold open. I mean, she is like repeatedly thrown back to, which I think is always really interesting when the host is in the cold open, because they don't do that super often at SNL. Obviously, it's like for time more than anything. Like they want to make sure the host is ready for the monologue. But every once in a while, we get an extra treat like that. And to have her back as arguably her most iconic character was so fun, but even more so because she's doing it with Larry David as Bernie Sanders. So it was also a really fun little like onstage reunion. And then it gets a little bit meta at the end when they, not directly, but kind of indirectly start referencing themselves as Larry and Julia and how these potential tax cuts may affect their paychecks from their residuals from having created or worked on Seinfeld. So I thought it was really fun. I thought she was a nice little reprieve in that cold open. And they also cut to Vanessa Bayer as Rachel Green from Friends and a couple of other just quote unquote iconic, well, not iconic. I guess they're supposed to be everyday New Yorkers, but to the audience, some iconic New Yorkers.
Yeah, exactly. I remember watching this episode live as it happened, and that was such a fun treat to see Julia pop up there. And it was got very Seinfeldian very quickly. They had the whole cadence about like, so what are you gonna do about the banks? We break them up. We break them up? Yeah, I'm talking about a big bank breakup. So like, I can't even do that, but like, it's just such like the Seinfeld cadence, like big bank breakup, like they're kind of coining a term.
Well, and Larry, didn't he quote George when he's like, Bernie's getting upset?
Yep. Yeah, he quoted George. They call back the you yada yada over the best part kind of thing. She says you're bald, which is something Elaine yelled to George when he was wearing the toupee at one point. So it's just a lot of fun Seinfeld callbacks.
Yeah, what a treat for Seinfeld friends.
Yeah. Always neat to see the host do a live from New York.
Yeah,
as
so
well.
great.
We don't often see that.
No,
so
and it's
cool,
I mean.
Julia.
That's got to be like the number one dream. Like hosting or being on the show is the dream, but then getting to say live from New York. I mean, which one of us doesn't fantasize about doing that?
Right. I don't even know how often she did it as a cast member.
Probably not very often.
Right. So like Eddie and maybe Joe Piscopo like did the live from New York.
I'm sure John on the SNN actually has
there's
stats on an episode.
He's going to email me, or Mike Murray's going to email me after listening to
Figure
this.
to answer your question.
Yeah, exactly. But such a cool treat for the host and for the viewer to see the host partake in the cold open.
And what a strong start to the episode too, right? Like again, with returning hosts, you can't help but kind of have your expectations continue to rise every time they come back. And what a great way to just advertise like, hey, this is going to be a great episode.
Yeah. And I think her episodes, what we're seeing is they're ramping up. So I actually think this is the best episode.
So do I.
Of the three. You do too?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I caught myself being like, this episode in the moment and on a rewatch just fires on like almost all cylinders.
It really does.
It's
and
so
you know, we
good.
got the entire, it's like a full 114-minute episode.
Exactly.
That helps out that we actually get to see everything this time.
Right. And you referenced some a handful of fun pre-tapes, Kallena.
Yeah, there's quite a lot of pre-tapes, which normally we get a little bit more of a mixture, but this was I'd say like every couple of sketches was a pre-tape. Some really took me by surprise. The Heroin AM sketch. Sometimes I just kind of forget that SNL can get away with certain things, because even just hearing the title of a sketch be called Heroin AM, I was like, wow, that's like, all right. But I also remember it's a show that airs, you know, at 11:30 p.m. on a Saturday. Like, they also know the audience that they're catering to. That one I thought was a really funny pre-tape. I kind of love the like mock advertisements or like infomercials. I always think SNL does those so well. It's a really fun way to highlight the host, but also kind of have cast members doing some fun things. Her husband in the sketch not even realizing that she was really on anything, and they're like, wow, looks like you're not going to need your nap today. Like, there's a few fun little one-liners in there, and I think certainly during the watch of a full episode, the pre-tapes are a fun way to kind of just like reset the audience members, and then for those of us who are fans, we're like, all right, if it's a pre-tape, it means that they're, you know, doing a big set change or something. So then you're also kind of anticipating like what's the next live sketch going to be. So yeah. I thought that one was really fun.
This was one of my favorites of the night.
Yeah.
Like a couple of moments from Julia in particular just stood out. Well, how she casually, almost like pitch lady like, delivers the line.
I want to use heroin, but I also want to get stuff done. That's why I reach for Heroin AM, the only non-drowsy heroin on the market, so I can get jacked on Skag and then get to work.
Like, just so like as a matter of fact,
Yeah.
like of course I want to use heroin,
Right.
but I need to get stuff done, so that's what this is for.
Yeah.
And it's just such good, and her maniacal laughing at the end.
So good. Oh my gosh. It had me laughing so hard.
Is that really a talent? Like, should all actors know how to laugh like that? Or is that something you can teach?
I 100% think it's something that all actors think about, because I feel like there's certain like trademark things that you want, right? Like, you want to do an animated movie. If it can be a Disney movie, like, great. You want something you can show your kids if that's something you plan on doing. You know, you want to host SNL, like whatever. And I feel like there's so much criticism about whether or not you have a good villain laugh or a good crazy laugh. Or look, Joker 2 is out right now, and so like there's so much talk about Joaquin developing the laugh and all the previous Jokers having to do that. So I think being able to do it naturally is great. I don't imagine that this is something that Julia like sat in her dressing room just rehearsing over and over. She just strikes me as someone who, like, on the day, this is just what came out. Everyone's like, great. Perfect.
Yeah.
Moving on.
Now I'm imagining it, though. Now I'm imagining her sitting there just like doing different kind of like, how should I? Okay, I'm doing.
Yeah, you can't do it too much. You know, you have to let it be a little bit more organic. But yeah, she was so funny in this.
Yeah, I love that one, and of course, Kallena, Julia being now in her 50s when she's hosting this, a good-looking woman in her 50s, she has to do a Chad sketch.
Yes.
So that was no surprise to me that she came on with Pete Davidson and Nick Jonas at the end doing a Chad sketch. What did you think?
Bonus Jonas, man. It was, I love the Chad sketches. I think everyone does. They're so simple, but they're so funny. And I think that's highly credited to the way that those sketches are edited. Julia was really great because I felt like she was so earnest in this sketch. Like, I really believed that her character was having this internal struggle and was like, I want to do the right thing, but I don't know, maybe we could do this, or no, we shouldn't. Like, I truly believed the struggle that her character was having. And so that made, Pete Davidson's like, okay. Like, it made it that much funnier because she's really here pleading and I'm really here, like, feeling for her. And then you have Pete, who's just like, I found a dead squirrel in your pool. Like, I thought the two of them were really great together. I think despite their limited shared screen time, I felt like they had chemistry with each other, which is cool. Mm-hmm. Like, that's what you want to see for that sketch to be successful.
Chad! What up?
You deserve an explanation.
Oh, okay, cool.
Look, you've done nothing wrong, okay? I should have known better, but I don't know. It was fun. It was new.
Okay.
But my God, I'm a married woman with 3 kids. My husband's on the city council. I'm the PTA president at Melody's school.
Who's Melody?
My daughter.
Okay.
I admittedly was the right age to be a Jonas Brothers fan. They were actually my first ever concert, guys, when I was 13 years old. So it was fun to see him at the end as kind of like, after she does all this pleading and is debating with herself about trying to do the right thing and be a good person, then she sees Nick Jonas and she's like, never mind. I'm gonna go back to my old ways that I just gave up 2 minutes ago.
Here we go. And then the line that she delivers makes it clear that she's gonna go back to her old ways.
Where's Philip?
Oh, my uncle just hired me. I'm gonna be doing your house now. I'm Toby.
That kid.
Perfect delivery again on that line, because I feel like she has one chance to nail that. It makes me think, though, going back to our earlier conversation about the pressure of doing things live, I wonder with these pre-tapes if they get the opportunity to be kind of finicky over their performances, if she, did 7 takes of that line, or if she's like a 2 or 3 take kind of person. Because if that sketch is live, which again, it doesn't work because of the editing, but if she doesn't nail that line specifically in a live version of this sketch, the sketch doesn't work, So it's interesting what they choose to have pre-taped, because you need a very specific reaction and performance from the cast for it to work, I think.
Yeah, I kind of think that they might do it a couple times, and if it's good enough, they'll just move on, since the editing part of it too is such a tight window. I think they wanted to probably just get the shooting done. Just get it done. If they did this live, that poor person in the control room who has to do the live bleep would have to really time that out as well.
Their job's on the line.
And with Nick Jonas, I'm going to make a little detour here.
Great.
And so I have a little story for our guest here. So when I used to work in radio, this was probably, 2006 or so.
Oh, wow.
So they used to, sometimes we would get artists that would come by. And one time we got an act to come by to the studio, and one of the program directors, Carlos, was walking them around and introducing them to people. So I was sitting at my desk, and Carlos comes up and he's like, "Hey, Tom, I want to introduce you to these guys." So they said hello. They said hello. My name's I'm Nick. I'm Joe. Good to meet you. This and that. And I was like, "Oh yeah, nice to meet you." And at the time they weren't that big. They were just sort of starting out. So I was like, "Oh, that's good for them. They're doing a little radio tour, getting their careers going." And then a few years later, I'm like, "Those are the guys that I met at the station."
Wow.
So I totally had Nick Jonas and his brothers right at my desk,
that's
chat talking to me, and I just didn't know what they would become. So.
I love that. I was never quite I never quite hit the fandom like so many other people did. I don't know their birthdays or their favorite colors, or I don't, I had, I think one of their records. I was enough of a casual fan. But Nick and Kevin and Joe would sometimes come into my old job. And so Nick, I got to serve a couple of times.
Nice.
And very shy, but very polite, and a good tipper, which is something I've come to judge after working in Los Angeles. So way to go, Nick Jones. He had a great couple songs on this episode, and he got to be in a couple sketches, one that we'll get to, I imagine, pretty shortly here, which he was pretty fun in as well, in a huge jewelry.
Yeah. So Chad, that makes sense. My wife likes to laugh at me because sometimes she'll say "Hey, is it okay if we have pizza for dinner tonight?" And I say, "Okay." And then she's like, "All right, Chad, thanks for your input," or something. So she will call me Chad if I just kind of say, "Okay." And then just kind of move on.
What a green flag from your wife. That's awesome.
Oh, it's a little inside joke we have.
I love it.
Yeah. It's a lot to go over this episode. What else? We talked about
Chad, let's jump into huge jewelry, because that was fun. I love the oh gosh, what's that shopping channel called? HBC or
QVC?
QVC, yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I haven't had cable in a long time, guys. I love the QVC esque type sketches that they do. I really love it when the host gets to come in and kind of do a zany character. I think often of Scarlett Johansson selling like porcelain fountains. Like that one
100%.
comes to mind right away.
Yep.
And so this was kind of like in that vein, where they are selling just obnoxiously large pieces of jewelry. We have A.D. Bryant in the cast at this point, so we get to have her come in, and she does a really fun bit about earrings that are so big that it has to come with like these shoulder braces that hold the earrings up. And I love when sketches are just kind of bizarre like that, and they really play big. They play to the biggest room. And it was fun to see Julia kind of in this formula. I think that SNL has done a lot and done successfully, and get to see her take on it, and she's playing kind of a fun character.
Hello, my name is Gabrielle Bologna.
And I'm Dana Bologna Tortorella.
Here on Long Island, the only thing as big as our dreams is a family.
And our God-given breasts.
But more than that, our jewelry. That's why we are the proud sister owners of Long Island's own
Huge Jewelry, located in a beautiful strip mall off the Jericho Turnpike.
You know, Huge Jewelry.
And then they're able to integrate Nick Jonas as her son or her nephew. I already don't remember who he played, but he comes in wearing like what essentially looks like a giant Wonka bar,
it's
like gold necklace. Okay,
yeah.
And it has like, I don't know, his name is like engraved in gold or something. And I don't know, I really liked it. I thought it was like a really fun sketch that totally was different from what we had seen throughout the night up until that point.
Yeah, she got to put on a stereotypical New York accent. The whole cast did.
Yeah.
So that was fun. I love when she asked Nick Jonas, "When did you become so good looking or something?" And he gives a specific answer. I love it. He's like, last March.
Yeah, it's amazing. And not even like for a joke, like just kind of like a throwaway line, but it's so good.
Yeah.
I love it.
This was a fun one.
Yeah, I like that one a lot. And then the cinema classics, I found myself laughing really hard at that one too. Again, I love when we get to kind of do like the black and white, like old Hollywood sketches. I don't know why, I'm just a sucker for like transatlantic accents, and I love seeing when people put them on.
You said I heard you say on Ariana, you shouted out Ariana Grande's transatlantic accent.
It was amazing.
Right?
Yeah, she was incredible. Yeah, so this is the second podcast this week where I'm talking about how much I love transatlantic accents. Awesome.
Did it give you any tips for as an actor as far as like as far as how to hide lines, maybe
how to hide lines? You know what? I'm lucky that has never been something I've had to do. I'm someone who manages to memorize my lines like pretty quickly, but that was a fun. I think that's part of why I liked it so much. Not only was it like the kind of sketch that I like, but it gave Julia an opportunity to do some great physical comedy too. So in this one, she is playing an old Hollywood actress. Well, they're doing a show and they're throwing back to old clips where it'd be like, did you know that she was having to hide her lines? And so she has her lines hidden on random props. So like underneath a vase is maybe like a single line, or at the bottom of a rocks glass is her line. So she has to like chug this glass of whiskey to be able to get to the bottom of the line. And then she has, was it Taran Killam that was in the sketch with her?
It was Taran, yeah.
There's this amazing moment where she has a small monologue as a response to one of Taran's questions, and she dramatically rips open his shirt, and the entire monologue is written on his chest. And it's great because there's so many visual gags, right? Like, obviously, that's not subtle to anyone watching it, which is the point of the sketch within the sketch, but it just gives her a chance to be kind of frantically running around the room. She's having to do these dramatic gestures. She goes and finds the line, but then comes back and kind of gets in place and then delivers it as she would if she had it memorized. So I thought it was a really fun opportunity to show off her acting chops, her physical comedy chops, her timing. It was, I don't know, different than what we had seen, I think, for sure, from the other 3 episodes. And like we had mentioned earlier, her first couple of episodes seemed more like you said, she was coming to play in the cast's playground, where this one felt like it was more, let's write stuff for Julia to show off things that she can really do.
I completely agree with that. And you brought up such a good point too, about really like, she was exploring the space in the sketch. Yeah. And that's a talent if you're a sketch performer, having to like run around. And I know like it's a little meta because the part of the conceit of the sketch is her lines are right there. So I mean, like that kind of probably helped out Julia too, right. Not just the woman, the actress in the sketch. So it was a little meta right there. But just having to run around, do that was a really great bit at the end of the lines written on Taryn's chest, and he's so like good. Reluctantly taking part in it because like I have this whole backstory of the studio telling him like, you know what? She's like, she brings in a lot of money for us. She's our star. Right. Put the damn lines on your chest.
Just do it. Yeah.
And he's like, fine. And then he ends up correcting her too on one of the lines, on one of the words.
And your point was good too about like maybe it made it easier for Julia, but I would maybe play devil's advocate and argue the opposite because I've certainly worked on things before, either in plays or shows where, I don't know, for one reason or another, like you open a book and your lines are in it or something. And when you've done a good job and you have your lines memorized, which I assume maybe she did, or at least partially the hosts are expect to like somewhat memorize so you're not looking at the cue cards the whole time. I think if you have it in your mind and you're going through whatever your mental process is to act organically but also get your lines out, if you all of a sudden see them in front of you, I feel like that is such an easy way to interrupt your loop and kind of throw you off. So if anything, I would maybe give her even more credit for the opposite reason, that she had to know her lines, know her cues, use the space, hit the marks in the space, but then also hit those comedy beats and make sure that the joke of the sketch not only got across to the audience, but that her doing it that way got across to the audience. So this, I don't know, this was a pretty complex sketch in my mind now that we're talking it out, actually.
Yeah, no, it really was. And then having to go back and forth to Keenan. And this was, there's a lot of moving parts.
Yeah, it was great.
In this sketch. Julia executed it beautifully.
So no notes. I mean, she was so good.
Yeah,
she was
zero
so good.
notes. Yeah, I don't know if the other pre-tape you were talking about was Mercedes AA class.
Yeah.
But that's a memorable one.
That had me laughing. It's 9,800 and something AA batteries to power your Mercedes. I don't know. It was a fun concept, but the line she delivers of extra trunk space to store all your batteries was, I don't know, that had me laughing so hard.
Good pitch woman, Julia.
She's great. And it's, I don't know, especially now that we're certainly in an age of electric vehicles and trying to do environmentally friendly things. The idea of also having to go to your local super center and purchase 10,000 batteries to get your car running is hysterical to me.
There were two more after that. The last one was really weird. The meet and match, the Match.com one. I was probably not in the correct headspace to watch that.
Yeah.
Honestly, like I watched that last night and I was just like, yeah, no thanks. I don't know. This is kind of weird. Just the visual of Julia and Kate playing these bizarre looking aliens. Like, maybe on another night it would have sat better with me, but props to Julia for looking a little weird, I guess.
Yeah, and for committing to it. You guys will tire of me saying this phrase a lot, but definitely a post-update sketch, right? Like, there are just the order of sketches on any given show is really important. And it just feels like, for those who know, typically like Tuesday nights, that's when they start writing, and they often go like overnight and prep for a table read on Wednesday. This just read like one of those sketches that, I don't know, they're like, they have one eye open, one eye asleep, sprawled out on the desk in their office at 4:30 in the morning. And like, this is the idea they kind of came up with. It just seemed a little not fully fleshed out, maybe. And if it's a sketch where I feel like I'm having to work too hard to figure out what the premise is supposed to be or what the butt of the joke is supposed to be, then it kind of loses my attention just for that alone. So I'm kind of with you that I feel like maybe if I had watched it somewhere else or if it had been a little earlier, maybe I would have bought into it a little more, but it's, I don't know, it was just kind of weird.
Yeah, it was. It's the last sketch of the night. Sometimes they're just like, "Oh, we have extra time for this."
Yeah, we got to fill 4 minutes.
We still got a show to do, so we got to let's throw this in. Yeah, the one before that, we just got to see Julia play a game show host.
Yeah,
that was kind of neat. The CBS one, kind of a thin premise, but kind of fun to see Julia as a game show host. I think. So,
which she did good because I think typically for those sketches they put like a de facto cast member in the role as the host, and then they let the host of the episode kind of be one of the zany characters that's in it. So it was kind of fun to see the roles reversed. And maybe one of the only sketches in this episode where she was the straight man to allow for other people to be performative. So Yeah, I feel like if it had ended with that one, maybe it would have been a stronger end to the episode. But overall, really, really strong episode. Certainly, like you said, it was a build over the course of her 3 to I think what ended with the best one. And
I think so.
I don't know. It makes me feel like we're due for another one with her. Don't you think?
I hope so. And season, I mean, SNL 50, a lot of exciting things are happening. We're hoping people are coming back. We're seeing Dana Carvey, and granted he's Dana Carvey, but we're seeing him and Andy Samberg and Maya.
So great.
We saw Lonely Island
pre-tape
already. So it seems like they're willing to really work in the show's history. Like Julia's someone I want to see.
Absolutely. I think she has to be. I am so excited to see what SNL 50 is going to look like. Again, for fans of the show, I think we've all been very eagerly awaiting this season. It's so huge, and we have the Saturday Night movie that's out right now, so I'm encouraged that we're maybe going to get like a wave of fans who maybe haven't watched in a while. And I think getting Julia back, or maybe doing a whole Seinfeld reunion, who knows? I think the sky is the limit, and I'm very excited and hope that she's included in the lineup.
I hope so too. And she's still very relevant.
Absolutely.
People still, especially now during the election, they're talking about Veep all the time, making references.
Clips are resurfacing all the time.
Yeah, you should watch. I mean, you said you've seen clips here and there and stuff, but it's such a rewarding rewatch. And it's Julia like you haven't seen her, like at her most vulgar, her most like, it's vulgar, but it's like clever at the same time. Like it's presented in a clever way.
Yeah.
But it's a wild show. So if you're okay with like a lot of cursing and a lot of just meanness, then that's a good one.
I think you've sold me. I just finished 6 Feet Under for the first time ever.
One of my favorite shows. It was maybe the best ending of any show I've ever seen.
I was so careful to not spoil anything for myself, because sometimes the plot got kind of like soap opera-y, and so I really wanted to Google things at certain points, but I really held out, so I did not spoil anything. Absolutely one of the best endings ever. But I have been deciding what I think my next watch should be, and it's very hard to not go back and just rewatch NBC comedies, which is what I always want to do. It's hard to not watch The Office for the 16,000th time. So maybe Veep will be the next thing that shows up on my roster. You might have just sold me.
Yeah, please. If you watch Veep, you got to keep in touch with me. You got to let me know what you think of it, please.
I'll just every 2 weeks I'll be like, "Here's where I'm at. Here's what happened.
An episode. Here's recaps. Just email me recaps. I would love it.
I love it.
Yes, yeah. So now's the time in the show, Kallena, where you're talking to voters, fans, our SNL water cooler folks.
Yes.
So why should they consider Julia Louis-Dreyfus as an SNL host who should be held in high regard?
Oh, great question. I feel like we've really touched on it. I just think that she is a performer through and through. I think she's a performer who is not afraid to make fun of herself. She's not afraid to go to the furthest end of the spectrum with the joke or for the joke. I think she's really bold. She's brave. I think she is nowhere near a one-trick pony. I think in her career, she has shown so much versatility, but I think when she hosts, she shows that too. I think she could play the straight man just as well as she can play the zany, weird character, and I think that she really offers something up for everyone in her episodes, and regardless of what your style of humor is or the type of sketches that you prefer from watching SNL, I think you get a little bit of everything with her episodes. And again, there's a reason that she was a cast member for 3 entire years. That's not nothing, especially up against the players she was with. So I don't even think we have to do that much pitching. I really think if you just watch some of her episodes, you'll understand why she's one of the greats.
So there's that. It's always great to hear Thomas in conversation, but this was especially interesting. Thank you so much, Kallena. That was wonderful. I don't know if it was enough to sway me or Joe or Shari. You'll have to tune in on Thursday to find out whether the SNL water cooler gang feel that Kallena did a good enough job to nominate this person. Will they make it in? And this person is Julia Louis-Dreyfus, of course. Will they make it in? I don't know. I can't imagine a first ballot for Louis-Dreyfus unless her extracurriculars, Veep, New Adventures of Christine, Seinfeld, creep into your consciousness and sway your vote. Well, that could be something. So there's that. Let's go to the sketch clip right now. This is Julia Louis-Dreyfus in a Chad sketch with Pete Davidson.
Chad!
Oh, what up, Miss Handler?
Hey. Oh my God. Chad. No, Chad, we can't do this anymore.
Oh, okay.
Wait. I couldn't sleep last night.
Oh, I hate that.
What am I doing? Am I some bored housewife who's having an affair with her 23-year-old pool boy? I mean, what is this?
Your kitchen.
No, I mean us. I really hope you understand, but we have to end this.
Okay.
God, I had no idea it would be this hard. It's just when it first
Chad!
What up?
You deserve an explanation.
Oh, okay, cool.
Look, you've done nothing wrong, okay? I should have known better, but I don't know. It was fun. It was new.
Okay.
But my God, I'm a married woman with 3 kids. My husband's on the city council. I'm the PTA president at Melanie's school.
Who's Melanie?
My daughter.
Okay.
God, if this got out, it would just ruin my life, our family's lives.
Oh, my bad.
But God, all I want you to do is clear the bags off this table and take me right now.
Okay.
But you can't.
Oh, okay.
Because I've learned that sometimes getting what you want means losing what you already have. Look, I wrote this for you last night.
Oh, okay.
Oh my God, I'm blushing. I want you to know I'm not a very good writer, okay? And I mean, it's not sophisticated, but it's how I feel. I mean every word of what I wrote.
Whoa! Hey, Miss Handler! I found a dead squirrel in your pool!
Bye, Chad.
Hello?
What up?
Where's Philip?
My uncle just hired me. I'm gonna be doing your house now. I'm Toby.
Back in.
Oh, man. Yeah, that's a good one. A little inside baseball. Thomas picks these sketches every week to showcase the nominee, and I think he did a real good job this week. There's not a ton of notable recurring characters from Julia. There are great sketches, but I think that we're talking about the hosting deal, and Julia's done a great job, and that chat sketch really shows the range. I guess she's acting against chat, for God's sake. At any rate, next week we are welcoming back our friend Ryan McNeil, which means it's a musical episode. And that musical artist that we're going to be discussing and nominating is Jack White. So stay tuned for that with Ryan McNeil and Thomas in conversation. Of course, Matt will be here. And of course, this Thursday, Joe and Shari will buckle up and get ready to tackle the SNL Hall of Fame episode. So there's that. That's what I've got for you this week. I want to remind everybody that the email address, we have a new one, is the SNL Hall of Fame at gmail.com. That is the SNL Hall of Fame at gmail.com. We would love to hear from you. So shoot us an email. Definitely make sure to rate and review the podcast wherever you get your quality podcasts. And one last thing, as you're walking out today and you pass the Weekend Update exhibit, do me a favor and turn out the lights, because the SNL Hall of Fame is now closed.
Thanks for listening to the SNL Hall of Fame podcast. Make sure to rate, review, share, and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on social media at SNL HOF. This is Doug Denant saying, see you next week.
To podcasts and such.
The most wonderful time of the year. Although, let's be honest, around the holidays, things really add up. But here's the good news. Only at Verizon, you can get a single line for $50 per month when you switch and bring your phone. So, while ice skating for two is definitely costing more, here at Verizon, you can save. Gifts for your third cousins? Steep. A single line with Verizon? Not so steep. A real tree? Pricey. A single line with Verizon? Less pricey. Flights to see Mima and Pops? Those are up. A $50 per month single line? That's down. Even a trip to the Atlanta holiday market will cost you more. But with Verizon, you can switch and bring your phone for just $50 per month for a single line on unlimited welcome, with autopay plus taxes and fees. All this to say, during the holiday season, when everything is costing more, you can get more for less right now at a local Verizon store. $15 monthly promo credits applied over 36 months with a new line on unlimited welcome. In times of congestion, unlimited 5G, 4G LTE may be temporarily slower than other traffic. Domestic data roaming at 2G speeds. Additional terms apply.